The Lobster's Dilemma by Sandra M. Odell. Narrated by Kate Baker. The Gleb to Brick's junior ambassador regurgitated a snoutful of steaming phlegm into the china bowl in the center of the table. I bared my teeth and lowered my brows. "Your offering shall nourish my bones and strengthen my people," I said. The alien snuffled its thanks before moving on to the next table. Bellevue stared at the bowl and wrinkled his nose. "What is that?" I dipped my spoon into the gelatinous goo and brought it up for a closer look. Stringy bits of red and yellow floated in the mucus. A multi-legged segment of something else slid off the side of the spoon and plopped back into the bowl. I sniffed and sampled the offering, allowing the textures to slide and crawl over my tongue. Well, it would seem to be an example of a Gleb to Brick's weapons treaty. Bellevue grimaced. How enlightening. I motioned to the bowl. "Try some." He slid the bowl closer to me. "No, thank you. I have crackers and calorie bars waiting back in the cabin." Bellevue had an enthusiastic appetite, but no stomach for bodily fluids. Unfortunately, I did. I had another spoonful of treaty, followed quickly by a sip of detox tea. The diplomatic dining hall of the Voracious thrummed and clicked with the first diplomatic courses. The junior members of each embassy served the opening offers. Later, senior ambassadors would make the rounds with seasoned counteroffers and condiment clauses. Low lighting and olfactory dampers allowed each delegation to dine in peace, even when the diplomatic overtures were anything but peaceful. As an applicant embassy, Bellevue and I sat at a table near the back of the hall, so we might observe and partake without infringing on another embassy's culinary objectives. Bellevue waited until I set down my spoon. "How was it?" I dabbed at the corners of my mouth with my cloth napkin, suppressing the urge to vomit. Bland and inoffensive at first, but with an underlying bitterness toward the end. The Glib aren't known for their creative use of subtlety. I licked my lips. Or salt. For the second course, the willowy Ow-Ow junior ambassador served a pottage of responses to a whip-thick agricultural proposal. The Rudisi 241 Collective offered a cessation of hostilities braised with jellied tanglefish in a spicy broth for the third course. Not bad, that one. I kept careful notes on Secretary about the presentation, appearance, and taste of each culinary treaty. The Terran Union's successful application to the Consortium Kitchen depended on my refined sensibilities to create a menu worthy of membership. At the end of the banquet, a blue, three-eyed walrus in a fishnet corset humped over to the table. It blurbled and wheezed, flecks of spittle spraying everywhere. "Chef Proust, sous-chef Proust, good it is to see you, yes?" said a mellifluous voice from a translator disc sewn into the top of the corset. The Schlev collected Bellevue's unused napkin in its flippers and made a show of unfolding it and wiping its whiskers. The disc translated its huffs into laughter. I laughed with it. "Excellent form, Chef Rothirk." I finished the name with a glottal harumph at the back of my throat. My own translator disc pinned to my shawl huffed, grumbled, and sputtered. Ambassador Rothirk dropped the napkin onto Bellevue's plate and rested a flipper on top of my carefully coiffed hair. 2 hours' work ruined in a moment. "Chef Proust, good your appetite is, yes? Learn much, yes?" I set my hands on my generous belly, my second best feature after my intelligence, as Bellevue liked to say. I did. I look forward to presenting the Terran Union's applicant courses. Ambassador Rothurk patted my head. Human creativity, human ingenuity, yes. Hopeful very. Succeed, else eat humans. Bellevue sprayed clamberry liqueur across the table. He wiped his mouth with his napkin before remembering the Schlev's oil glands. He grimaced and dropped the napkin back on his plate. I'm sorry, Chef. Eat humans? I cut him a sharp look, mouthed, Bellevue. He hitched a shoulder and made a gesture of muted panic. I kept my head very still beneath the ambassador's flipper. It would indeed be unfortunate if our application to the consortium were denied. Ambassador Rothurk blinked all 3 eyes in an acknowledgement sequence. Declined acceptance. Eat humans? Yes? But eating humans? Bellevue said with care, enunciating every word. We were not informed that the culinary embassy would be subject to these conditions if the Terran Union's application was denied. Ambassador Rothurk huffed. The translator Disk laughed. No. Yes. No. All sentience. Feed sentience of all. Yes? No. Eat just culinary. No. Yes. Eat humans. Totality. Yes. Bellevue blanched. He grabbed the clamberry digestive and downed it in one gulp. Ambassador Rothurk waved its flippers and wrinkled its whiskers. If fail, prepare citrus nitrate glaze. Glorious. Yes? I carefully folded my napkin. Lovely. Back in the suite, Bellevue's panic was anything but muted. How could you just sit there and let the Rothurk say that? I placed secretary on the nightstand and began to pull the combs from my hair. Bellevue, please. They're going to eat us. Only if our application isn't to the consortium's tastes. Bellevue slipped out of his dress and dropped it into the recycler beside the bed. Flirk their application. This whole application process is like asking the lobster how it wants to be cooked, and humanity is the lobster. I sighed and called up a mirror on the far wall. Please, love, I need to think. Comb out my hair? He sighed and brought out a wire brush, and I loved him for it. We sat on the bed in mutual silence, Bellevue's hands a tangled balm in my hair, while I reviewed consortium menus and amended condiments. When the consortium approached the Terran Union with an offer of membership in their kitchen, the assembly jumped at the chance to gain access to new technologies and trade routes. That's where I came in, ambassador by training, epicure by delight, though my delight did not extend to the current situation. Bellevue plaited my hair, and we settled together in bed. He warm against my curves, me absorbed in my reading until he put his fingers through Secretary's holographic display. You haven't heard a word I said. I set Secretary aside. It beeped in acknowledgement and turned itself off. Guilty as charged. We need to send a tight beam back to Hare and get the assembly involved. We can't make this decision on our own. He was right and wrong at the same time. I won't do that until we have more information to offer. We don't need the assembly in a spin. Lena, you can't honestly think to handle this alone. I kissed the top of his head. No, I just want to be certain what I tell Hare is accurate. I'll get clarification from Rothirk tomorrow. It's probably a mistranslation." Bellevue nodded and lay his head on my breast, freckled and pale against my dark skin. "I hope so." "It wasn't a mistranslation." "Early on typical misunderstanding. Yes, yes. Sad, but no longer." Ambassador Rothirk said over a tube of fish oil and formic acid the next ship day. "Recognized as facet part way. Yes. Official declaration. Fermenting committee. Yes. Diplomacy in action. Yes." The ambassador's suite was humid and smelled like a net of rotten fish. I begged off the Schlev morning restorative in favor of my detox tea. I will say I had not expected such to be the case. Ambassador Rothirk huffed and wheezed. "Terran Union. Acceptance desired. All, yes. If not, settle. For the honored eating, yes." Perhaps the translator didn't have a proper reference. I leaned forward and did my best to wrinkle my upper lip in a Schlev display of anger. "As chef of the Terran Union delegation, I must protest the terms of this agreement. It is nothing less than consortium-sanctioned genocide." Ambassador Rothirk squeezed all three eyes shut in confusion. "Genocide," I said again, sacrificing the wrinkled lip for clarity. "The annihilation of my entire race. The death of billions upon billions of sentients, because the review committee didn't like my plating?" Again, the blank look. Secretary suggested a different tact. It couldn't hurt. I gargled a bit of tea, took a deep breath, and bellowed as loud as I could, vigorously shaking my head until spit flew everywhere. Ambassador Rothirk huffed and flapped his flippers. "No concerns, Chef Proust." "Yes?" "Humanity eaten with compassion and fine garnish." What a lovely image. Millions of dead humans sprinkled with chopped parsley and served with a twist of orange. I wiped my chin. Can we both agree that humanity has much to offer the consortium? The Schlev blinked an affirmative sequence. Yes, much resources, much knowledge, yes." "And that the Schlev in particular have a vested interest in trade with human space worlds?" "First contact preference, yes. Heavy metals, methane, fresh coconuts, good all. Yes." So far, so good, but I had to step lightly. Secretary beeped a reminder to hunch my shoulders and wiggle my torso in good-natured agreement. Humanity appreciates the guidance and support the Schlev has shown us over the past 2 standard years. The Schlev also hunched and wriggled. Yes. Can the human culinary embassy count on the Schlev to support our concerns about consortium policies? I didn't step lightly enough. Ambassador Rothirk's muzzle darkened and his whiskers laid flat, the first sign of a threat display. "Chef Proust. Inquiry of insincerity. Counsel, yes." I presented my hands palm up and tilted my head to the right in recognition of his authority without releasing my own agency. Think of it as diplomacy in action. I sipped lovely, plain hibiscus tea. Honestly, Hare, there's no reason to panic. Hare Jeriper, Ambassador Prime of the Terran Union, glared at me over the tight beam screen. Standing on the brink of human extinction seems like the best possible time to panic. When I returned to the cabal, Bellevue had immediately requested a tight beam to Earth. By the time Hare came online, I'd bathed and changed into a silk dressing gown, and now felt more myself and less an underdone custard. I have everything well in hand. My menu is... Hare slapped the desk and leaned forward, the image so clear I could have reached out and pinched his florid cheeks. This is not a cooking sim, Lena. You can't rewatch an episode if this one fails. I arched a brow and set my tea aside. Really, Hare, do I strike you as someone who would resort to cooking sims? From the bed, Bellevue made a nervous sound somewhere between a giggle and a gasp. Hare's eyes bulged. The veins on his neck bulged. And then, just as fast, he deflated and sank back into his chair. He closed his eyes and massaged the bridge of his nose between forefinger and thumb until his color returned to normal. You're right. That was uncalled for. I apologize. What I meant to say is that the Assembly will insist on a formal request to withdraw our application to the Consortium Kitchen. There's no reason to bother the Assembly. Hare snorted and shook his head, eyes still closed. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. I picked up my tea. Of course I said it. The Consortium races control nearly every system within 10,000 light-years of Sol. If we withdraw now, Earth may never be granted another reservation at their table. We would lose far more than we would gain. Faster than light drives, pulse gates, dozens of medical advances, reliable nanotech, terraforming technology. Hare opened one eye and stared at me with what I could only call exhausted rage. A roasting spit is hardly what I could call a seat at the table. Of course not, but it's their table and their rules. He snorted. I'm not certain I like their rules. No, I am certain I don't like their rules. Everyone eats everyone else is hardly a viable diplomatic strategy. I shrugged. It is if we want to make it out of Sol's system. I can make this work, Hare. That's why you chose me. Hare lowered his head and said nothing for a full 2 minutes standard, then sighed. What's for dinner? I managed to smile against the rim of my cup. Goodwill, ingenuity, mineral rights, and fresh coconut. Hare raised his head and leaned forward, elbows on the desk. He set aside Hare Jeriper, my friend of more than a decade, and looked at me as Ambassador Prime Hare Jeriper, my administrative superior. You're right. I did select you, and I know you're qualified. That does not mean I will cater to your need to grandstand. Is that clear, Ambassador Proust? He seemed to have forgotten that Bellevue and I would serve as an appetizer for the Feast of Humanity. What he called grandstanding, I called survival of the Lena. Of course. You will forward your menu to me for final approval before the application dinner. Hare looked left and right. Bellevue? Bellevue came off the bed and moved into frame behind me. Here, sir. You will make certain I have that menu before the dinner. Should Ambassador Proust fail to meet my requirements, you will act in my stead and submit the formal statement of withdrawal to Ambassador Rothirk. I'll tight beam you the request once it is finalized. His brows drew down. Is that clear, Junior Ambassador Proust? I didn't have to look at Bellevue to know his expression teetered between resolve and remorse. Yes, sir. Good. Hare looked at me again. Don't make me regret my choice, Lena. He cut the beam, and the wall screen blinked out. Bellevue rested his hands on my shoulders. I'm sorry, was all he could manage. Growing up, my parents delighted in introducing me to the joy of cooking and the pleasure of a well-laid table. I parlayed my love of food into a senior ambassadorial position, feasting on raw sardines with dolphin delegates, snacking on durian and rambutan with the high holy of the orangutan and her month-old son. I was both humbled and honored when Hare handpicked me to develop and present the Terran Union's application meal to the Consortium Kitchen. The table was set, and I might well be on the menu. I kissed the back of Bellevue's left hand. Bitters are for cocktails, love. Would you get secretary for me? I need to review the menu. I had 4 standard days to transform a menu that read like the last meal of the condemned into a diplomatic tour de force for a selection of ambassadors with wildly divergent political and physical tastes. And how could I draw the splendid diversity of human cuisines all together? I had no common element, nothing to promote our similarities while celebrating our differences. In keeping with consortium minimalist kitchen traditions, Bellevue and I made up the entirety of the Terran Union embassy. This left Bellevue to assume the majority of my ambassadorial duties. He participated in the lectures on seasoning sentient rights, how to make the best use of your enemy's exoskeleton, and the differing schools of thought on presenting breeding rights in an au poivre sauce. He even attended the diplomatic tasting functions, taking prodigious notes and guzzling detox tea. The poor dear. By the close of the second standard day, he collapsed beside me on the bed, looking positively green. Remember me fondly when I'm gone, he said, and pulled a pillow over his face. I didn't look up from Secretary's display of my latest failures. He tossed the pillow off the bed and rolled onto his side to face me, his dress bunched around his legs. I swear, if I have to sample one more disarmament treaty, I will expire. I mean it. They are so bland, it's like eating wood paste with even less texture. I switched to the real-time cameras in the main kitchen. The drones worked with steady precision at their given stations. Yet they lacked, creativity, joie de vivre. And where did they learn how to cook? A factory? Did you know the Exectol are violently allergic to garlic? They swell up like balloons and need emergency medical care before they explode. I offered him an arm, and he curled against me. Sad. I nodded. The Retu begin every personal negotiation with a request for a genetic sample from the other party, so they can whip up a nice dipping sauce in case the deal sours. Bellevue opened his mouth, closed it again with an audible click of his teeth coming together. I continued. I spoke with invested ambassador Letu Sub-3 of the Retu yesterday. Bellevue became very still. And? Secretary reminded me that I at least wanted to try to sleep tonight, I acknowledged. I gave them a genetic sample. Bellevue's arm tightened around my middle, protective and loving and frightened at once. Humanity should have turned tail and run the moment the Schlev offered the aperitif. I set Secretary on my nightstand. Well, hindsight being a glorious liar, all we can do now is make the best of it. Bellevue kissed me, and hope our best is enough. I dimmed the lights, but neither of us could muster sufficient interest to do more than tangle in the sheets. We lay together in the dark, whispering reassurances until Bellevue's breathing slowed to a soft whistle and the occasional snort. When he finally rolled over and pressed his back against me, I picked up secretary and continued working. Hare was near apoplectic at my status report on the third standard day. "You said you had the menu all figured out." I dimpled a smile. "I'm reconsidering options." Red crept into his hairline. "Options? There are no other options." "There's always options, Hare. Trust me." I cut the beam before Hare's sputtering gave way to screaming. I closed my eyes and rubbed my brow. The conversation had sapped what remained of my reserves. I needed a change of scenery, a breath of fresh air, as it were, so I dressed and headed to the crystal observation deck. When the lift opened, I stepped out and stood beneath the wonder of emptiness filled with light. Beyond the crystal hull blazed stars, nebulae, galaxies. Dampers muted the constant thrum of the engines, leaving a strange stillness in my bones. Sol lay, I checked my bearings, above and to my left, not even a distant shimmer. Once upon a time, humanity stared at Earth's sky and wondered at the nature of the stars. I tipped my head back and knew. Strange to feel so small inside my own skin. Other sentients conversed or meditated as they pleased. I walked away from the crowds. The thought of engaging with anyone who might shove a meat thermometer up my backside was not a kind one. I walked until I could no longer hear, see, or smell their presence. As a young girl in the kitchen, Mother always said, "Make do with what's at hand, and you'll surprise yourself most of all." All right. What did I have? Cons. Nothing to bring the menu together. Lists of nutrition and allergy requirements that went nowhere. The tattered remains of my confidence. The impending destruction of the human race. Pros. The determination that I would not be the main course for anyone but Bellevue. Not much to go on, but it would have to do. "Chef Proust," chimed a voice behind me. I turned to find the gossamer ambassador, Rysel, of the Yoti, and the towering, shrouded ambassador, Niv, of the Oxian, standing together. I touched my fingertips to my temples in traditional Yoti greeting, then puffed out my cheeks and bobbed my head for the Oxian. "Pardon, sentience. I did not hear you approach." Ambassador Rysel smiled with both mouths, then frowned in equal number. "Understandable. You will leak?" "What? Oh." I wiped away my tears. "No cause for concern." "I will have heard of such biologies. This will be an indicator of fertility." Yoti were one of the few species able to speak Earther, though their understanding of tenses left much to be desired. No. The leakage is residue from meditation." The Yoti fluttered all 8 of its nictitating membranes in the affirmative. "Understanding. This one hopes we will not disturb your meditations. This one will miss you at the symposium on braises as a means of promoting planetary ecology. Your junior will say that you are busy preparing Earth's application menu." "I'm sorry I couldn't attend the symposium. I have indeed been quite busy." Ambassador Rysel hip-bowed to me, her color darkening to a rich orange. "This one will eagerly await your diplomatic expertise. Humanity will have much to offer and receive from the consortium. And tasty, too." A lovely reminder of what I'd hoped to escape. I bit my tongue until I could manage a decorous "Thank you" Another flutter of nictitating membranes. Chef Niv will look forward to your application. That could be bad. Oxians were notoriously picky negotiators. I undulated my arms at Chef Niv. I await the pleasure of presenting humanity's application for your consideration. Ambassador Niv extended 2 barbed tentacles from under its abdominal carapace and touched me lightly on my upper arm, my belly. I stepped away. Oxian communication was equal parts touch, and a component of our translation units had yet to decipher, but, ambassador or no, I was in no mood to be treated as a piece of meat. The ambassador stood silent for a few seconds before Ambassador Reisel hip-bowed again. You will be ready for interrogative when Chef Nivs asks your weight? I blinked. My weight? The OT flicked its nictitating membranes. Chef Niv will agree the interrogative refers to your body's relative mass or the quantity of matter contained by it. My physical statistics had never figured into my work before. Should I be flattered, concerned, or both? I gave the figure. Ambassador Niv withdrew its tentacles. Ambassador Reisel hip-bowed to Ambassador Niv, and then myself. Chef Niv will make inquiry if that measure will be with blood and organs, or when you will be properly dressed and trussed. Make do with what's at hand. My hands were empty. What wine went best with long pig? Lena, do you have an actual menu? I didn't have time for such questions. I was everywhere in the kitchen. Did the Normande sauce reflect the breadth and depth of Earth's mineral wealth? Could the dressing for the tossed greens use more sentient rites? Should I add more fresh coconut to the canam croc? Not now, Bellevue. Lena. I passed him secretary on my way to prepare a chiffonade of basil for the bioreplication braise. Of course I have a menu. This isn't Another station, another dish. I held out a spoon of broth. What do you think? This isn't... I'm thinking lemon to brighten the colony defense initiatives. Bellevue dutifully sampled. Lemon would be fine, but not too much. Lena, this isn't... A few drops of fresh squeezed lemon juice, a slurp. Perfect. I turned to hover someplace else, and Bellevue had not moved. I stepped right. He stepped with me, blocking my way. He held up secretary. Lena, this isn't a menu. It's a jumble of scribbled notations and half-calculated measures. I waved away his concerns and stepped around him. I had more pressing matters to attend. For example, the death of all I held dear, including him. Those are first drafts and proof of concept. I know what I'm doing. Bellevue took my upper arm and turned me to face him. He didn't let go. Lena. Love. Stop. Please. I looked at his hand, my panic now peppered with anger. Bellevue, hear me out. You've barely slept since this whole thing began. Don't argue. I checked secretary. And you haven't even started work on your verbal presentation. We can't do it. It's over. Why did he insist on being difficult now, of all times? Don't be ridiculous. The verbal presentation will take no time at all. I can finish it while the soufflé rises. We have 2 standard hours. I'll plate. Bellevue thrust secretary in my face. You added garlic to 3 of the dishes, and the exectile ambassador is on the presentation council. He inflated his cheeks until he was red in the face and then exhaled with a sudden wet pop. Nonsense. I admit I haven't slept particularly well, but I would never make... I blinked at Secretary's display, the flashing multiple references to garlic. I could almost, vaguely, recall noting the addition of garlic to liven up the arts platter. Antipasto station. List marinade ingredients. A speaker formed in the center of the drone's back and answered in my voice. Extra virgin olive oil, white wine vinegar, basil, oregano, garlic. Cracked black... Stop, Bellevue said, and the speaker disappeared. My one true heart lowered Secretary and released my arm. I'm going to present Rothurk with the statement of withdrawal. I went cold. This couldn't be happening. No. Please. The garlic was a mistake, but the rest of the menu is... No. What are you doing? I rushed over to the soup drone, slopping bouillabaisse into a tureen too small to hold everything. Steaming broth, fish, and aquaculture futures went everywhere. Put that... Why did you... No! Bellevue spoke up behind me. It's over, Lena. The remains of my confidence crumbled under the weight of panic and streamed down my cheeks. I can make this work. I just need more time. The drone moved to continue pouring. I said, put that down! Bellevue came to me, kissed my mouth, my eyes, and stepped away. I'm sorry. Looking more resolute and sad than I had ever seen, he turned away. Please, Bellevue. His shoulders slumped as he left the kitchen. No. Oh, no. I was so close to making it work, and now... Should I scrap the bouillabaisse and the associated agricultural accords? Meticulously check the rest of the ingredient lists? There was no time. I would have to admit defeat, or humanity would simmer in a butter sauce and be forgotten. Either way, I had lost everything. I couldn't do it. I wiped my cheeks. Wiped them again. I stared at my wet hands. I rushed out of the kitchen. Bellevue, wait! I'm coming with you. He didn't turn around. I'm sorry. Ugh! I bull rushed into the lift, spun him around, and kissed his tear-streaked face. Secretary, I need an emergency tight beam to Hare. Use the ambassadorial override if you have to. Secretary beeped an acknowledgement. Bellevue shook his head. This is out of your hands, Lena. My madcap smile stopped anything else he might have said. You're wrong. The lift doors closed behind us. I strode into the banquet hall in my formal red robes of office and my mother's apron, every inch Ambassador Lena Proust, culinary representative for the Terran Union, a lush woman with wide hips and a wider smile. I may well fail, but I would rock that parsley and orange twist. Behind me came Bellevue with Hare's tight beam display, and behind him floated a glide cart with a single covered dish. I'd requested a neutral scent base for the presentation to ease any olfactory discomfort. The 13-member application committee sat in a semicircle at the far end of the hall beneath the glow orbs, each with its own eating platform and utensils. I stepped up to the applicant's podium. Bellevue moved to stand on my right. The glide cart slid to my left. Ambassador Rothark sat in the center position, Ambassadors Rysel and Niv to either side. The Schlev slapped its flippers on its platform 3 times, then raised them above its head. Chef Proust, Sous-Chef Proust, Master Chef Girepur. Greetings to you. Yes, acknowledged you are by the Consortium Kitchen. Yes. I slapped my thighs 3 times and raised my arms above my head. Greetings to you, Ambassador Rothark, and assembled sentients. A tremor of fear snagged the glottal harumph. I kicked that freeloader out of my head and continued. The Consortium Kitchen honors the Terran Union with its acknowledgement. All sensory organs focused on the glide cart and its single-covered dish. I smiled and waited. And waited. Let them come to me. Ambassador Rothark finally snuffled and sucked its whiskers. Unusual, most, this, yes, came from the translator. I nodded, still smiling. The other ambassadors trilled and clicked soft queries amongst themselves. Ambassador Niv extended a tentacle in my direction. More whisker-sucking. A single dish does not an application make, yes. No. I raised an eyebrow. May I begin, Ambassador Rothark? I could almost hear Hari praying under his breath. Ambassador Rothark slid its flippers over the eating platform. Yes, Chef Proust. Continue, yes. Thank you. I pressed my hands together. I had not washed them since leaving the kitchen. Assembled sentients, I present humanity's application to the Consortium. I removed the cover from the dish, and a hush fell over the banquet hall. I set the lid on the slide cart, picked up the cut crystal goblet, and took a drink. Dihydrogen monoxide. Water. To my far right, the quib 1/2 ambassador shrieked and went belly up in its bowl. The ambassador's blue-skinned thrall hurried to revive it. I had the remaining ambassadors' complete attention. The Consortium Kitchen has lauded humanity's ingenuity, our inventiveness, our fearless use of cilantro. None of that would have been possible without water. Wars have been won and lost, and civilizations made for the sake of water. Humans have long sought clean sources of water for drinking, cooking, powering our early technology, and personal care. We express emotional states and physical exertion through water. Some of our greatest technological and humanitarian innovations came from our need for clean water. It is in the last 2 centuries, humanity has come together to preserve and protect Sol System's water. Without water, all life on Earth would be nothing more than a scant handful of minerals and basic proteins. Another drink. Even coconuts contain water in their center hollow. Ambassador Rothark inflated his cheek pouches in interest. Ambassador Rysel flushed bright orange. I caught Hare's smile out of the corner of my eye. Double doors opened on my left, and in rolled a dozen serving drones, each with its own slide cart laden with mineral rights, philosophical accomplishments, fresh coconut, and no garlic. I present to you a selection of dishes and treaties featuring the wonder of freshly crafted dihydrogen monoxide. Sentience of the Consortium Kitchen. I look forward to your acceptance of the Terran Union.